what happens when we die is my answer to that question is always the same. We don't die. That's where I always like to start. When we die, we don't die. Because we have to remove from ourselves this idea of death.
The soul is immortal, that the soul continues after the body dies, that there's a difference between the spirit and the body. The body is temporary, the spirit is not. With that understanding, when the body dies, then the spirit leaves the body and goes to somewhere in the spirit world.
Once the body, the heart stops to beat, the brain stops to function, our conscience goes on. That's what happens when we die.
We don't change. We continue to be exactly the same. So if I die here today, I wake up in the spiritual world tomorrow, and I haven't acquired any more qualities, and I haven't lost any of my vices. I still have all of them, qualities, imperfections. So I'm basically the same person without the physical body.
We are not the same one when we go into the classroom and when we go out the classroom. In that sense, we are not the same. In that sense, once I die, when I return to the spirit world, I am not the same that entered the material life. Because we lived through a lot of things. So we are not the same.
Generally speaking, the more a person is advanced in terms of intelligence and in terms of morality, the more that person will make a transition from physical death to the spirit world, the more that transition will be easier.
The transition is different for each person. There is not two equal death processes of the physical body. The experience is different from each one of us.
The same way we don't live the same, we don't die the same. We have things that can be seen as generic or general. Just like a baby that is born, and they're all being born as natural birth, for example, right? Some of them are being born natural birth. It's all the same. You can say that it's all the same. But it's all the same for the one who is looking from outside. But for the person that's experiencing it, there will be similarities, but they will not be the same.
But in general, the process is the same. A time of confusion, a time of understanding where you are, and a time to start the new journey back in the spiritual world.
Some people may suffer, some people may be happy, but the idea is we don't die. We continue, we move on.
If someone passes slowly through illness, that kind of thing, they may be much easier to make the transition. Or somebody is sleeping and they die in their sleep, then they may just make the transition right out. If somebody dies suddenly, there may be a lot of confusion for that spirit in the spirit world.
It is different for everybody. It is based on what we live, on how we see things in life, not by necessarily being a spiritist, not by necessarily being a religious person, but by having the idea that life is much more than this.
Spiritism emphasizes that we don't need to be afraid of death, really, that death is just a transition. And so the transition out of the body into the spirit world is one where it doesn't have to become something to dread or to fear.
The physical process of discarnation is the same. Your spiritual body disconnects from your physical body. It's a process that can take up to 72 hours. The spirits that are in charge of this process will separate the ties that link the physical body to the spiritual body. But that's the physical aspect of it. The understanding and the conscience that you have of the process of your own discarnation is what's going to be different for each person. Because you mentioned two people that died in a car accident. Let's say one of them is spiritual, believe in life after death, understands that their life continues. So they'll be confused, yes, because an accident is something very sudden. But once they understand that they have died, or their physical body that have died, that they are back in the spiritual world, after the shock period, they'll be ready to move on. The other person that died had no beliefs or never worried about the spiritual side of ourselves. This person will have a lot of trouble to wake up in the spiritual world and understand that they are dead.
We have to remember that we have the body, the physical body. We are a spirit, and we have in between what I am, the perispirit. What happens when we die, when we discarnate, is I, as a spirit, am connected to my body through this perispirit, which is the middleman, let's say. So this middleman is the one that has the ties to the body. These ties need to be untied.
The transition, it's not instantaneous per se. There's a lot of different examples of how this can occur. For some spirits, they may actually start to leave the body a little bit before the body physically dies. Someone who's terminally ill, for instance, may be having those experiences. Somebody who dies in their sleep, they're dreaming, and then they just suddenly, they don't wake up, and the spirit just continues on its way.
Which is completely different than to an experience of a young man or a young woman that's in the prime of their age, and then all of a sudden, either unfortunately chooses the saddest door of all, which is taking their own lives through the doors of suicide, or by an accident. Those ties are at probably the strongest ones. So what happens is those ties need to be broken, and that's how it happens. We are being detached when we die. We are being detached. This perispirit is loosening their ties. Loosening its ties from the body to let the body stay and me go on.
But generally speaking, the transition of the spirit from the body depends upon the evolution of the spirit. The soul doesn't feel pain. I mean, there can be physical pain during death, depending upon how one dies, but the soul itself does not feel pain. However, there can be instances where once a spirit has crossed over into the spirit world, it may feel as though it's in pain because it's reliving or very connected to the time of death. But that's not because it's literally in pain, it's because the mind is very strong, and so the spirit thinks that it's in pain.
All the process of death or discarnation has the assistance of the spiritual benefactors. Now, how are we prepared to receive the assistance? It's the same like we are here living on earth, right? We say that we have spirits around us all the time. We connect to the spirits we tune with. The more evolved, the less evolved, the spirits that share the same interests. So in the process of discarnation, we are going to be attracted to those spirits that vibrate at the same level that we vibrate, and that can be helpful or hurtful to us in our process of discarnation.
A lot of people would really want to take everything that they have here. Would really like to take their money, their houses, their songs, their videos, their cameras, their whatever. Naturally, we can't take any of this.
We may like our material possessions, whatever they are, but when the time comes to let go of them, we have to let go of them.
The only things you take it back to the spiritual world is your intellectual abilities and your moral abilities. Everything that you learn intellectually and morally stay with you. Everything that is material, that belongs to the material world, you leave it behind.
Some spirits are okay with that, and others are like still worrying about the house they used to live in and stuff like that, or worried about the money in their bank accounts, or they're worried about whatever it is that they used to own. But Spiritism strongly emphasizes that we need to learn to let go of material attachments. They're not going to come with us. You know, it's the old expression, you can't take it with you, and that's very much the case.
There's this very specific story about this spirit who was a spiritist when he was incarnated, and he dies, he discarnates. And he is now explaining his experience on the spiritual life. It's this return from the corporeal to the spiritual life. And there's this very moment in the book when he is at his house and he describes this feeling that he's having at that specific moment. That his stuff, that the furniture, that the TV, and that he feels that those objects are calling, quote unquote here, are calling him as if he is attached to those objects. And I find that description so powerful because we cannot take the objects with me. I cannot take those objects when I die. They will stay. They are material. I will not be able to carry them. But the feelings that I had for them, I will carry with me.
So what we bring with us into the spirit world is all of what we've learned through our life experiences, the relationships we've had with people, all the relationships we have with all the people we know offer an opportunity of some kind to learn something. And especially those that are really closer to us, relationships with families, partners, that kind of thing. Those are opportunities for each and every one of us to learn whatever it is we need to learn.
The only thing that we can take is what we cannot carry with our hands, is what we are, what we became, our wishes, our desires. Unfortunately, to some degree, which is not unfortunate, it's just part of the law, but our addictions, in whatever level it is.
All the attachments to the material world are going to make your life more difficult in the spiritual world, because the attachments are to things that are not going to be there. Your loved ones, they're going to be there. But if you don't care about them, but you care about your house, cars, and other material possessions, that will be very difficult.
So what can I take when I leave? I will take my attachments to things. I will take my attachment to people. I will take my feelings for stuff. I will take my love for things, if we can call it love for things. We should call it attachment. But some people love their things and are attached to people. So we should be very careful in dealing with these feelings, with these sentiments towards things, because that's what we carry.
That's why Spiritism focuses so much on the know thyself, on the importance of knowing who you are, being aware of your imperfections, and work to improve your imperfections. Because what's going to matter in the end is how much effort you made to improve yourself.
We need to learn to be more accepting of ourselves. Spiritism strongly emphasizes that we need to be patient with our progress, that we're not expected to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We learn from mistakes, so that's fine. And the more we can truly accept that of ourselves, the more it's easier to be at peace. And that, of course, can help make us much happier. And again, be less afraid of things like death when the time comes.
The person that really decides to love, that's what makes our discarnation process, that's what makes our life become a life, a more important life. Not to others, but to myself. A life that can really, and that really brings me to a different level, to these moments of change when this will be tested, not by others, not by a judge, not by somebody to say, hey, you will suffer, you will not suffer. No, it's not about exterior coming to the interior. It's actually the other way around, is interior coming to exterior. So if I love, when I discarnate, the interior will allow me to free myself from these bonds more easily. If I don't love, I'm so attached that for these bonds to be broken, it will take more time. Unfortunately, it will take more suffering to do it.
First, where are we going to find ourselves in the spiritual world? We're going to find ourselves in the spiritual world where our vibration takes us.
Since it's a personal experience, it varies from what they say. Kardec goes to explain in one point in this chapter that if a lot of people die at the same moment, at the same place, the way he says it is interesting. He says, even if they're seeing each other when they die, before they die, when they wake up on the other side, they may not see each other anymore.
We are going to connect ourselves to the spirits that are vibrating at the same level that we are. So, if you take the example of André Luiz in Nosso Lar, why did he stay 8 years in the lower zones? Because that's where his mental vibration took him. Because that's what he had in his own mind at the time of his discarnation. First, it took some time for him to understand that he was dead, and then the connections he was making were the connections that he allowed himself to make.
For every person is a different experience. Some people will say that, oh, how wonderful it is. I wish I could have been here before. And some people will want to go back and say, why am I here? I want to go back. I'm missing my wife. I'm missing my children. I still have so much to do. So it is a personal experience. If all I build within myself is darkness, once I have this openness, which is removing from me this limit that matter brings to me, what will I see? If all that I built was darkness, I will see darkness everywhere, right? But if I'm building light from within, when I die, everything will be light.
Prayer first helps you. Now, when you pray for somebody, you are sending these loving vibrations to that spirit, to that person, that will receive it in different forms. If they are suffering, can alleviate a little bit their pain. If they are thinking of us, we'll help them, console them. If they are close to receive any assistance, prayer will be there in storage for them. When they open themselves to receive, they will receive. So a prayer is never lost.
If we have our mind set, and if we are doing things for a reason, if we are really doing things out of our hearts, because it's something that I long for, it's something that I need, when I get there, it will be great. So some of us might find a friend that died before me. Some of us might find our parents. Some of us might find our grandparents. Some of us maybe won't find anybody that's close to us, but we will feel the love of those coming to us to rescue us, because love is everything there is.
With all the knowledge that Spiritism gives to us, we should be fully prepared to, after the state of confusion that happens to everybody, right? When you sleep and you wake up in the morning, the first few seconds you are confused, right? You extend this to separation from the physical body, you can understand that there is a state of confusion. Once the state of confusion passes, with the knowledge we have, we should be able to deal with our new situation much easier. Now, as I said before, the moral aspect is very important. But Spiritism gives us the tools to prepare ourselves. What are we going to do with the tools is our personal job.
Spiritism emphasizes that we need to put, we have the responsibility to be the best that we can be, to take care of others around us. If we can help people who are in need of help, that we should do so. And we have to realize what we can and can't do with people. And therefore, we're not just here to enjoy life and have a big party.
Once you go into each of us, each of our lives, our experiences will count on how we deal with the experiences when we discarnate.
We're here on earth to learn. We're here to improve. We're here to grow, whatever that really means for us.